In this video I'm gonna show you 6 essential melodic techno bassline patterns that you need to know to make a solid idea for your melodic techno track. Hello guys, I'm Prospektt, welcome to my new channel. I'm a techno artist and producer. On this channel I'll show you how to create music, I'll show you all sorts of techniques I use by myself. I created this channel specifically for my English speaking audience, so if you're interested you can subscribe to my Russian speaking channel. I will leave a link to it in the description below. There are already many interesting videos on various topics. As always, all the samples and presets from my videos are available on my Patreon page, so if you're interested, please subscribe. Also, the best way for you to support me is to subscribe to this channel, and please don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss the new videos. Let's dive into the project. As you can see, I highlighted all the different patterns with the different colors, not to make you confused. And let's start with the most basic pattern, in my opinion, which is called Massano Style, because Massano uses it a lot in his tracks. Here's what it sounds like. Let's start with the kick. Nice stumpy kick with a nice click on top, no processing on it. For our bass line we have this serum patch I made. As you can see, it plays up and down an octave pattern on the D note. The preset itself looks like this. We have two oscillators, the square, the octave lower, and the detuned saw wave, octave higher. We have an envelope shaping our sound and making the pluckiness of our bass. Also a bunch of effects like a bit of saturation, a bit of chorus. All the other basses I would be using would be kind of similar, so we won't dive into the synthesis too much. The main trick for this bass line is the velocity control. So as you can see, I matched the velocity curve for our cutoff frequency, and now as we're changing the velocity, we're also changing the cutoff frequency. Let's get back to our piano roll, and as you see, I draw this different velocity, and instead of just the static bass line, we have the groovy solid pattern. And of course, not to forget about the sidechain on our bass. I used basic fruity limiter for this. I routed the track to send sidechain signal to our bass, but be careful with the sidechain settings. Try to find the sweet spot on your release and threshold settings when kick and bass sound good together to your ears. The next pattern we're gonna create, called standard melodic techno, we have our kick. As you can see, for this pattern I decided to separate the low bass and the top bass to make our final bass line more exciting and complex. Let's start with the low bass, which sounds like this by itself. This is the serum patch, again two oscillators with the filter shaping the sound, nothing crazy. Moving to a piano roll, you can see the basic rolling bass playing the 16th note, but there's some magic trick I used to make it sound more human, more groovy. I pressed Alt plus Q and FL Studio and pick the swing groove and edited the start time of my taste. Also, if you noticed, we have this cool effect at the end of the bar. some kind of bass feel, I just doubled the last note of our pattern to make a bass line a little variety. For the top bass, I used my old plug preset called Argy Pullout, which I dragged an octave lower. And of course, to make it not to conflict with our main bass line, I cut it all the low frequency on it. So if you're layering the bass synths, always keep in mind that only one bass synth you have should have low frequencies. This way you're avoiding all the unnecessary troubles with your low end. Then some heads on top of our pattern and my atmosphere to complete our loop. The third pattern we're gonna break down is dotted 8 bassline. As you can see from the name, its rhythmic pattern will be slightly different from our previous loops. Just like in the previous two patterns, I divided the bass into two parts. That's how our kick sounds like. Our bottom bass plays 16th notes, this time without swing. Here's how the preset looks like, slightly different from my previous ones. 3 oscillators, nothing complicated, and for external processing, a bit of multiband compression. Together with the kick sounds like this. Now let's move on to our top bass. Instead of usual rolling pattern, he plays a polyrhythm, which is also called the 8th note with a dot. I'm sure you've heard this rhythmic pattern many times in progressive house and melodic techno tracks. This is how the patch looks in Serum. But why did I split our lower and upper basses? Why not make such a groove with one bass? I did this in order to make our low end more consistent, but nevertheless without losing this polyrhythmic effect. Thanks to this, we leave the energy in our bass without losing the right groove. According to the effects, everything is the same as in the previous loop, so we cut all of the low frequency on our top bass line, but add a little space with the delay and the reverb. Delay plays a big role. Without him, our top bass loses the necessary consistency and the groove. Don't forget about sidechain, add heads and atmosphere, and our pattern is ready. The fourth pattern I called Argy and Argy because it kinda reminds me the stuff they produce. Here's how the kick and the main bass sounds like. I don't know, but this loop kinda reminds me the Argy's aria very much. This time I used Diva for this bass line, 2 saw waves with the short envelope on the filter. Don't forget that all of these presets are available on my Patreon page. Let's take a look on the bass processing this time. I have a cutoff filter, reducing everything below 63, not to make our low end too busy. The OTT about 37%. And the fruity compressor to tighten our sound. The pattern this bass playing is the basic polyrhythm as we've done previously. Now moving to our top bass sound, I'm using this sequence in Serum by Bound to Divide. It plays exact the same rhythm as our main bass and adds a nice character to our bass line. Getting rid of the low end on this and some high end, adding sidechain and some other samples, and we get this. Now for the fifth pattern, it's all about the bass sound design. We have the basic punchy kick we used in the first pattern, and we have our plucky short polyrhythm bass. Let's open the Serum patch we have. 3 oscillators, the square wave, the modified sine wave in the bottom, and the detuned saw wave on top. I've created this plucky volume envelope and the even shorter filter envelope. To make the bass sound more deep, I raised up the resonance a bit. Also on my mixer I have the Fruity Delay 3 making the same job as on our previous top bass. As you can hear, this pattern is not so intense as the previous one. It turned out to be rather deep and hypnotic, which makes it possible to have room for some fancy huge synths and steps. The last pattern I called the Psy-trance pattern because for this one I'm using the classic Psy-trance plucky bassline, so the overall loops feels like the Psy-trance tune slowed down to 125 BPM. We have this basic kick. Unlike the previous patterns, you can clearly hear how much space our bass occupies in the mix. As you can hear the bass playing the standard 16th notes, let's open our serum patch. We have 2 oscillators and please pay attention how short our filter envelope is. Altogether, with the downsample distortion and the OTT, we get this biting sharp sound. I have no external effects on this bassline, but this time I set the threshold on my sidechain compression much lower than on the previous basses, get a more distinct pumping effect. Now adding some loops and a snare, and we have a solid starting point for our track. Hit the like if you enjoyed the video, all the presets are available on my Patreon page. Thanks for watching and see you next time, goodbye.